get a mic check from you?
Yes. Yeah, like 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Make it official.
Hey, yes. Okay, so you are good. Sound is great. So we'll just start things off. Again, thank you. It's such an honor and privilege to be here to talk to you about a day that we'll always remember. And just for the record, may I have your first and last name, spelling, and title, please?
Marcus Adams, Sergeant over Investigations with the Madison Police Department.
Okay. And, spelling.
Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S. Adams is A-D-A-M-S.
Where were you that morning on 9/11?
I was on the SWAT team at the time, and I was actually home because we didn't have to be at training until 2 o'clock. So I was actually home watching it live on my TV when it happened.
What went through your mind when you saw it?
Shock, disbelief, just like everybody else, glued to the TV, trying to figure out what was going on and, trying to absorb everything.
And in between that time, how were you, from what I understand, were you with the Madison County Sheriff's Office, or were you still with him?
No, I was here, Madison Police Department.
Okay. And from between that time of when 9/11 happened to when you were deployed, tell me about how that went into effect. How were you able to be deployed out there?
They put out an email asking for volunteers to go to New York to help out the department for obvious reasons. They were understaffed, overwhelmed, just not enough. So they put out an email, and of course I signed up, hoping to get picked. So they chose 8 of us to make the trip.
And why 8?
I'm not sure why 8. It just worked out that way. So we took 3 marked units and our van with our gear in it, and so 4 vehicles, and we drove up there.
And when you were part of that 8, when you were selected as part of that 8, what feeling did you get knowing that you would be at ground zero?
My first thought was, being a small town department, going to New York City where they had more police officers at the time than we had residents. And I'm thinking, their whole attitude is, what can you do for me? And our attitude is, what can we do for you? And we got there, took us 18 hours. We rolled into New Jersey, and you could see across the river ground zero. It was early in the morning, still dark, and it was lit up like a football stadium. Of course, we got on the radio speaking to each other. It was our first seeing it. And of course, we knew there weren't any sports going on there. We knew why it was lit up. It was, I think it started kind of sinking in then, once we rolled into New York City. They just waved us through the toll booths. I mean, it was a different time. But being part of that, hey, let's go, what can we do? It was all about, what can we do for you? That's all we wanted to do. It was be a part of helping this police department, this city, this country do what we could do while we were there.
Wow. And talk about when you were deployed. I think you said it was about 3 weeks after.
We left 3 weeks after the attack, so we got there the first week of October. We pulled into New York, checked into our hotel, reported in to the Javits Center where all the volunteers went, got signed in, got some rest, and got our first assignment. So throughout the week we worked different assignments to relieve the police officers so they could go take care of their families or their personal business, whatever they needed to do to not have to be 7 days a week for just a little while.
Wow. And talk about, when we were on the phone, you mentioned some very vivid images that you've seen when you were at ground zero.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about that.
We did get to go to ground zero while we were there. When we first pulled in, there was a 47-story building that had collapsed on the north side, which is where we first stopped. And you could see parts of the tower still sticking up in the background. And we met a fire department crew, and while we were there, they found a fireman in full gear, still buried, because you've got FBI agents going through rubble. We got to walk the long way around to ground zero, to the towers themselves. And while we were walking, you could see written in the dust messages where people had written down their emotions. Some of them were pretty graphic toward bin Laden. Some of them were just sad, and it was all written in the dust. We weren't really supposed to take photographs, and I did not photograph any of that stuff, just out of respect for the situation. We did get some photographs, with the police officers and the crew, and they were really good about it. But it was just taking in the whole. 3 weeks after it happened, you could still feel the heat coming from the towers. They were still spraying water on it. You could smell the burnt wires from the buildings, which is what we didn't expect. We expected, oh, there's all these people dead, you're going to smell all this. It wasn't anything like that. And the news, that little TV set didn't even do it justice. When you walked into all of the confusion and the work and the mess and the dust and the holes to the subway from the surface, and you could just feel everything going on with the messages. It was a lot. It was a very bittersweet trip. I would have never gone to New York City if it hadn't been for this. I grew up in the country. I'm from this area, small department. I'm just not a big city guy, but to go up there, wouldn't have missed it for anything.
And was that your first time in New York City?
It was. Yeah, it was very bittersweet because of why we were there. We weren't there for any other reason than to go and do whatever they needed us to do. Didn't matter to us.
And I think, again, when we spoke, you said was it at the time you had put in 30 years already in the department, or at that time, how long had you been serving in the force?
I started another department in '85, so I came here in '88. So I'd already been here about 13 years, 16 in law enforcement before I even went to New York City.
Had you ever seen anything like that?
Oh, no, never. No one's ever seen anything like that, not even the New York City police officers. And I'm assure you they've probably dealt with and seen more than anybody here in North Alabama ever has. But nobody in this country had ever dealt with anything like that.
And talk a bit about the brotherhood that you developed with both men and women who serve on the force as police officers, as firefighters, just first responders all together, that sort of camaraderie that you all had developed.
Well, we were already a close-knit group of people. Police and fire, we kid each other all the time, and make jokes, but that's all part of the love for each other, honestly. The respect for our jobs and what we do. I mean, we're all servants to the community, so we can all relate to each other. But the guys that I went to New York City with, of course, there were 8 of us. 2 are now deceased, retired or, moved on to other departments. But I still keep up with the majority of them because there's probably 5 of us still in the area. And 2 of the guys, we actually went back to New York last October, and it was exactly 19 years to the week we were there the first time. So we could go to the memorial, because we'd been wanting to do it since we went the first time. We want to go back. And it took us 19 years, but we got there, and all I can say is wow. If you ever get to New York City, you got to go to this memorial, because it is breathtakingly bittersweet, speechless, emotional. It's just a lot to take in, but it was really nice to go back and see what they did with it to show respects for all the people in the towers, the firemen, and the police officers that lost their lives that day.
Another thing that we talked about was that, we always say never forget, but it seems as though over the years people have forgotten. What do you say to that?
I could probably keep you all day talking about that, because when we were there, the New York police officers bent over backwards for us, which was shocking because we were there for them. The public came up. They just wanted to be near the police officers, not just New York, but even us. Photographs, it was, not something you're used to in this job, because you're usually, in a different position. But then the way the nation came together after that hadn't happened in decades. So everybody's like, never forget, never forget. And for the most part, there's a huge majority who haven't. But when there's no comparison to September '01 to September 2021, 20 years later, because now we couldn't be more divided because people, not just the 9/11 thing, they have forgot we're Americans, and now everybody wants to argue over vaccinated or unvaccinated, Democrat or Republican, and the lack of respect for just live and let live has gone down the tubes, unfortunately, and I don't know where this is going to go. It's concerning and it's sad. We're a better country than this, and I hope this runs its course soon.
Very, very powerful statement there. I didn't expect that. Yeah, because 20 years ago we were more united. Do you think we'll ever get back to that point? Is this light too bright?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Do you think we'll ever get back to that point? And pray to God it doesn't take a tragedy to get us back to that point.
I don't really see a light at the end of this tunnel right now. I mean, when you want to verbally or physically attack somebody because they disagree on a politician or a vaccination, it's a simple, what happened to the golden rule? When's the last time you heard anybody mention a golden rule? Does anybody in this generation even know what a golden rule is anymore? It's a matter of respect. We don't have to be on the same page, but we don't have to fight about it either. That's what makes us the country we are. So where did that go? What gives people the right to verbally and physically attack other people because they disagree politically or medically? And that's where we are right now, especially medically. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Was there anything that you wanted to share as we mark 20 years? I don't like to say anniversary because it's not anything to celebrate.
No, it's not. Let's just take care of each other. Democrat, Republican, black or white. But I've got people that don't like me because I wear a badge. Well, you don't know me no more than I know you. We're a judgmental society, always have been. But I mean, at some point in time, we've got to stop. It's like we're destroying ourselves from the inside out. These other countries don't have to do it. They're sitting and watching us. Start showing some respect for your neighbor and your peer, the guy walking down the street. Just because he's wearing a Republican t-shirt or a Democratic t-shirt, this hate has to stop. And it's not just political or racial. It's across the board. Who has time to walk around with this hate festering them every single day because I believe in or disagree with something that you do in your life? It's just horrible. It's just really sad to